Well, anyway, he came in, and because of him, he gave me a car, a police escort, and then a sergeant, Sergeant Chalesko, who was my guardian angel at that time. We went to the morgue with a police car and a police escort. We got to the morgue. We were there 3 hours. Sergeant Chalesko comes out and says they can't identify him, but his teeth are still in place. So then we, luckily, and could say this luckily, Bobby's, he had a root canal the week before. So we had the police car, actually took a police escort with the sirens going and took us up to the dentist, or down to the dentist, I forget where. Oh, it was up from the dentist from the morgue. And we got the x-rays of his teeth. And we came down and the body was identified. This was on Thursday. And on Friday we took him home. And we buried him Monday. Now the reason I say that, I mean, I wasn't planning on doing that, but again, I really want to give a story to the face. So, you know, I'm understanding what people that lose children. And again, I don't want to be a victim. I don't want anybody to feel sorry for me. You know, there's too many children around the world that are dying every day. And again, going back to the Vietnam Life magazine, for those of you who weren't around, to see those children, to see those soldiers, their face blown off, their arms missing, their legs missing. Never, ever did I lose that sight of that. If there's a better case for never, ever, ever thinking of going to war, all those Life magazine pictures should be in the news every day. This is why we keep doing what we do, because people, they're so sanitized to things like this. To see someone blown up or see pictures of them, their face totally blown off. Well, let me just go to the morning of 9/11. Bobby took the subway down to Ground Zero. Again, he worked at Merrill Lynch. Everybody assumed he was going to be fine. I remember being at work. I worked at Crozier Hospital at the time. I worked in the adolescent unit. Someone said, well, you better go into the TV room. I go in there, and you see Tower 1 burning. I think, oh, everything's okay, because Bobby worked at Merrill Lynch. Well, through my investigation, that's all I do. I read 3 hours a day, actually preparing myself. Everything I prepared for this is something I wasn't planning on doing this. But preparing myself to speak. I'll never know when I'm going to be on TV. I never know when I'm going to be at a place like this. But this is my investigation. Of course, no one's going to investigate how my son was murdered. So he gets off the subway, and he decides at the last minute there was a seminar on the 106th floor, Windows of the World. He decided he was going to go to that. At first, we thought he might have jumped, because he might have been up on the 106th floor. But then I heard so many people tried to call him, and there was no response. The biggest mistake I made, and I feel so unbelievably guilty, although I understand why the funeral director told me not to, I did not view the body. He strongly recommended that I don't view the body. And I took him at his word. I said, well, you know, can you live with that memory by viewing the body? But again, then I still didn't know what happened to him. Well, I finally met up with the doctor who examined him that morning. We were told he's one of the first 10 bodies found that morning. So I figured, geez, he couldn't have jumped. This is right after 9/11. So again, this is always going through my mind. I really wanted to know how he died. It was so important to me. Well, talking to the doctor that examined him, he examined him the next day on the 12th. There wasn't that much to examine. But my take on it is, and this goes, you know, when Richard Gage came out with, you know, the architects and engineering, I really didn't jump on board because being a scientist, I can't sit down and prove to anybody how the towers came down. Logically, I can say I agreed with everything. You know, this is a piece of steel. This sucker is heavy. Listen to it. That's a little piece. But I still don't have the credibility to walk into an audience and prove to you that it's impossible that these towers could come down. But after listening to Richard Gaten and being around other engineers, architects, scientists, and then with that doctor and the things I actually saw, I still didn't want to see he told me, he says, please don't look at the pictures. The only thing I saw were pictures of his feet. But through, again, my investigation, the picture, the drawings I had, his face was just totally blown apart. When I think that nightmare, I can't see that face. His nose disappeared. His eyes were gone. Top of his head was knocked out. My thing is, I think he started walking, and he decided at the last minute to go into the towers. And talking to William Rodriguez, I've talked to God knows how many firemen. I think he died before the plane hit. I think he walked into the towers, was walking into the tower, and a huge blast hit him. His chest, lacerations and full of glass. And he took a direct hit it could have been that piece of steel I just had in my hand, God knows. But can you imagine that, just that thing? It's 10 to 15 pounds, just that little piece. Going, I don't know how many miles an hour, but I've heard reports of huge chunks that left the North and South Tower during the collapse. How many tons they are? They're going 60 miles an hour through the air into lower Manhattan. If I picked this up and threw it at someone and it hit him in the head, it would kill him immediately. Well, I think my son took a blast because he did not answer any of the phone calls. Again, this is my thinking. I think he got hit right away. That a blast as he was walking in, because the glass was all out within minutes. And of course, the story on that line was, well, the flames, or not the flames, the gas coming down the elevators, down the shaft, caused a great explosion in the lobby. But I don't know how many people, well, just think, have you ever been up to the North Tower to South Tower? Huge columns of glass out there. And I've talked to people from Ladder 10, which is right next to the South Tower, right behind the South Tower. By the time they got there, all that was knocked out. And again, because scientists have told me, they said, it is impossible, absolutely impossible, that that gas would have come down that distance and created such an explosion. So from these investigations, I really have jumped on the bandwagon of architects and engineers because it directly relates to my son's murder. That's my obligation. That I feel, or I know, it's very important for me to know, because if I just say I believe, that doesn't mean diddly to me, because then it just sort of puts doubt in the back of my mind. I know that he died from an explosion. And with this, which I wanted to do in the beginning, I have been working with New York City Ken up in New York City